Hello, Kako. Welcome to the hearing for the Committee on Agriculture and Food Systems. Today is February 13th, 2 p.m., and we are reconvening in room 312 for decision making on HB 1455. Today we have with us Vice Chair Kahaloa and Rep. Cochran. Before we get started, I'm going to go over some brief housekeeping rules. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with technical staff only. Please use the Zoom chat function for technical issues. In the event of catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting. In that case,
recording in progress.
Notice will be posted. Please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from hearing without the ability to rejoin. We'll now begin decision making on HB 14.5. So members, on HB 14.5 relating to the issuance of special purpose revenue bonds to assist Maui grown coffee, I believe that the author still has some work to do, as well as I know there has been a lot of discussion with the area representative. And so for now, we're going to defer this measure, and we will look to the Senate to see if they have a vehicle moving. In that case, hopefully any of the issues that arose in this past hearing can be addressed then. That being said, any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, we're going to adjourn this 2 p.m. meeting. Aloha Kako, welcome to the joint hearing for the Committee on Agriculture and Food Systems and the Committee on Health and Homelessness. Today is February 13th. The time is 2:07 p.m. and we are convening in room 312 Today we have with us Vice Chair Kahaloa, Rep. Peruso, Rep. Cochran, and Rep. Woodson. Thank you.
And on the health side, I have myself, Chair Bellotti, Vice Chair Takanichi, Representatives Iligan, Amato, and Kobayashi for the health committee.
Okay, before we get started, I'm going to go over some brief housekeeping rules. There's a 2-minute time limit per testifier in order to allow as many people to testify as possible. In the interest of time, if you have submitted testimony on time, our committee has received it. If you wish to present oral testimony, please summarize your testimony. For testifiers attending over Zoom, please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is completed. Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. Please use the Zoom chat function for technical issues only. If you get disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If you disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connection on the testifier's end. In the event of catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from hearing without the ability to rejoin. Lastly, if time permits, we'll offer the opportunity for walk-in testimony for those who would like to testify in person but did not sign up. Please make sure to provide your contact information to the clerk. We will now begin the hearing set forth for today, and we have one bill, which is HB 1266, relating to donated gain. Is there, first testifier we have is Hawaii Cattlemen's Council.
Thank you, Chair Gates, Chair Albalati, and Vice Chairs Kahaloa and Takanamichi, and members of the committees. I'm Nicole Galassi, representing the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council, and we stand on our testimony in support. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committees. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have a written testimony in support, so we're going to stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1266? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none. Okay, we're gonna do a quick recess for decision making. Recess. Okay, we're reconvening for our 205 agenda. We are going to be taking a vote on HB 1266. Chair's recommendation is that we pass this out as a HD1 with no text, and we will be defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1266, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Cochran? Aye. Representative Lowen, excused. Representative Peruso?
Aye.
Representative Woodson?
Aye.
Representative Ward, excused. Chair, your measure is adopted.
Health Committee,
you.
same recommendation, House Draft 1 for HB 1266.
Health Committee voting on HB 1266. Chair's recommendation is passed with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Amato?
Aye.
Representative Iligan?
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi? Representative Mizuno is excused. Representative Nishimoto is excused. Representative Garcia is excused. Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Aloha Kako, welcome to the hearing for the Committee on Agriculture and Food Systems. Today is February 13th. The time is 2:21 p.m. and we are convening in room 312. Today we have with us Vice Chair Kahaloa, Rep. Cochran, and Rep. Ward. Before we get started, I have to go over these brief housekeeping rules. There is a 2-minute time limit per testifier. In the interest of time, if you have submitted testimony on time, our committee has received it. If you wish to present oral testimony, please summarize your testimony. For testifiers attending over Zoom, please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will only allow you to chat with technical staff only. If you're disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from hearing without the ability to rejoin. Lastly, if time permits, we'll offer the opportunity for walk-in testimony. For those who would like to testify in person but did not sign up, please make sure to provide your contact information to the clerk sitting on our right-hand side. We will now begin our 2:20 p.m. hearing for the Committee on Agriculture and Food Systems, starting with HB 605 relating to infrastructure. First testifier we have is the Department of Agriculture.
Good afternoon, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kahaloa, members of the committee. The Department of Agriculture, Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. The Dam and Reservoir Working Group is very important to the agriculture of Hawaii. We do have a comment. We support the bill and comment that we'd like to change the 2 representatives to 4 representatives, 1 from each county to ensure representation. We'd also like to add the Hawaii Farmers Union United to the group of representatives from the farm group. This would expand the representation from the actual farm group to 3, joining the Hawaii Farm Bureau and the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. We feel this expansion to from 11 to 14 members would expand the representation from the counties and from the farm groups. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Dale N.R.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Cardi Chang, Chief Engineer for the DLNR on behalf of Chairperson Don Chang. We oppose this measure, but let me give you the reasons why. We don't necessarily oppose the intent. However, we oppose the measure because we believe the purpose and intent of this bill has already been addressed under prior actions by the legislature. Back in 2011, the legislature passed Act 154 to designate water resources as important policy action into the board's powers. There was also in 2014, the state allowed special purpose revenue bonds for dam and reservoir owners as a mechanism to help them finance their dams. And also, we don't believe the dam safety law needs to be revised. When the legislature passed the Dam and Reservoir Act of 2007 after Koloko, the current regulations were compared against 48 other states and is comparable to nationwide standards. So any dilution or watering down of the dam safety rules currently in place would not be in the best interest of public safety. DNR has been really open with the dam owners. We've been working well with dam owners. Many of the dam owners are complying. So we don't believe a formal working group is necessary at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Haima.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is Adam Weintraub. I'm here representing James Barros, the administrator of Haima. We stand on our written testimony offering comments. Note that the goal of mitigating any sort of hazards or drought hazard from dam infrastructure is aligned with HYEMA's activities, and that we would just encourage any action taken by this working group to be aligned with the overall hazard mitigation structure that HYEMA already is integrated within. Thank you, and we're available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have a written testimony in support. I just want to highlight a few things. Again, public health and safety first and foremost. We don't want to see another colloquial. However, the dam rules are really difficult for our dam and reservoir owners to comply with. So we did hear DLNR's testimony. In fact, there was a bill earlier today in the Senate that actually seeks to provide grants and loans and even tax credits, but mostly grants is what we're looking for. So, you know, these reservoirs, these infrastructure not only serve farmers and ranchers as far as irrigation, but also for drought mitigation, flood control, wildlife habitat, even wildfire control. So they do serve a purpose. We just don't want to see these dams and reservoirs decommissioned, and that's why we're asking for this task force. But we are looking to work with DLNR and the state and the legislature to find solutions. Just a quick reminder that last year the legislature did appropriate for Wahiawa irrigation, $26 million. That's how costly it is. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is HCIA.
Steve Davis here for HCIA Chair. We stand on testimony and support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Cattlemen's Council.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Nicole Galassi on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council, we stand on our testimony and support. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Ulupono Initiative.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Mike Monikata here on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We'll stand on our testimony and support.
Thank you. Okay, we have about 2 individuals in support and another organization in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 605? Seeing none. Members, any questions, comments, report?
To the gentleman from DLNR, who is not in support, correct? Is it because it's redundant? I'm not sure I got exactly what you said.
We don't think it's, Cardi Chang, DLNR Engineering, we don't think it's necessary. This issue have come up in the past, and we think we've addressed it through prior acts and the ability to finance dams. It was mentioned today that there's other bills, other vehicles moving that are other financial assistance can be provided through grant systems. So we don't think having a formal group to discuss the same issues that have already been addressed is necessary at this point.
How many dams are we talking about?
Right now, there's 127 regulated dams in the state of Hawaii,
On all the islands?
all statewide.
127. And is it your department that enforces the regulations on those? Or who inspects and who watches over all the dams?
We are the regulatory agency pursuant to 179D, Hawaii Revised Statutes, to regulate and enforce on the dam owners.
So
Dam
you
owners,
meet with these guys all the time, or gals? You
Excuse
meet
me?
with them? You meet with them. In other words, you do what this bill is already saying.
well, we're available as a resource. We're still a regulatory agency. We still have a job to do. However, we've been very open to meeting with dam owners if they have issues with complying. We try to work with them early on and tell them to consult with us before you start to do things, because maybe there are different ways to comply. So we're always there. We also give training to dam owners and the dam owners consultants to enable them to understand what they're responsible for.
The word Kaloko has come up a number of times. How many of those dams may be near or even close to being one of those?
I have my staff, Edwin Matsuda here, who is the dam safety head of the DLNR. Do we have an indication of those high-risk, high-hazard dams?
Give us
in
the
poor
state
condition?
of the dam art, or in general.
So we just completed phase 1 inspections of a good portion of the dams that we have here, and there are a significant amount of them that are in poor condition. However, for those, we've actually been working with the owners to establish safe operating levels. In some cases, we've asked them to maintain these structures empty. So we have been working with them until they can actually make the modifications that they need to do to bring them back up.
Are they aware of this bill? And do they have an opinion?
I'm not sure if they're aware of this, the dam owners?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not, we
Are
haven't
any
reached
of
out
them
to them on
sitting in the
specific bill.
audience? I don't see any. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments, questions, concerns, members? Seeing none, we're gonna move on to HB 308 relating to sustainable food systems. First testifier we have is the Department of Ag.
Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kahaloa, members of the committee, Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. The department supports this measure and comments that including the farmers in the working group strengthens the scope of opinions within the group, and that a 23-member group is quite large. It's important to have a large group, but maybe what you can do is the large group then comes up with all their recommendations that will be taken on by a smaller group, more focused group. That was, I think, a better way to get to the heart of the matters. Thank you.
Next testifier we have is Attorney General's Office.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Jody Yee with the Attorney General's Office. We submitted our testimony. We do have a little bit of concern regarding the description of some of the committee members, and we have proposed suggested language, which we would like you to consider. I will be here for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is University of Hawaii.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chairs, and rest of the committee, Anya Wieczorek, Interim Dean for College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources. You already have my written testimony in support of HB 308. Just one thing that I wanted to add is that we have been talking about increasing food production here in Hawaii for quite a long time. And after COVID hit, we realized that we really got to step in and improve it. So if we really wanted to increase the food production in Hawaii, we have to look at the food system. No one entity ever is going to be able to resolve this issue alone. So establishing the working group is a really first step in moving us forward. So I am standing on my written testimony, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Public Health Institute.
We'll stand on our written testimony and support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is North Shore EVP.
Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kahaloa, members of the committee, this is Kevin Kelly, President of North Shore Economic Vitality Partnership. I think unbeknownst to a lot of people in this room, North Shore EVP is actually an economic development organization. When we looked at the ag clusters around North Shore is when we decided we had to do something about food safety, and it turned out, in fact, to be a statewide issue. This bill, I laud it because we do need a plan, but it's very broad in what kind of plan. I don't know if this is a strategic plan. I know HGO has a strategic plan. I don't know if this is a regional economic analysis. I don't know if this is a food chain analysis. I think the goals set out are rather broad in this bill, primarily because I don't think we really understand who the players are in the food chain in Hawaii, much less the other industries that abut agriculture in our economy. When we look at ag being 0.3% of GDP, I think that's because DBED measures production at 0.3% of GDP. They don't look at the food manufacturing, the employment that comes out of it, the transportation services, the hospitality industry influences that all come from agriculture. Agriculture is much bigger than just growing things. And so I'd really like to see this working group take a much broader economic perspective on what agriculture is in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Food Bank.
Aloha, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kahaloa, committee members. I'm Kina Mahi. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Strategic Partnerships at Hawaii Food Bank. We stand on our written testimony, but do want to emphasize the importance of cooperation, collaboration across not only agriculture, but also those of us who work in food. We all know our food security issues, both our remoteness and the high level of food insecure children we have here, and understanding our food systems and making sure that we coordinate across it is critical for hunger relief efforts, in addition to a healthy agricultural sector. So mahalo for the chance to speak on this.
Thank you for your testimony. We're going to move on to Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have a written testimony in support. We are requesting a few amendments to the makeup of the working group. On page 2, line 17, two representatives of University of Hawaii system. We're asking that it's the Dean of the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources that does the selection. On page 3, line 19, for the Hawaii Farm Bureau, we do request that it's the president of the Hawaii Farm Bureau, not the executive director. President, as the head of the organization, should be the one who selects our member. And then finally, we are asking that the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council is added, again, selected by their president. There is no page, no line, because it's a new request. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Ulupono Initiative.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Mike Komunikata here on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We stand on our testimony supporting intent. We just have some concerns on the sheer number of participants in this group, just the efficiencies that's going to come with that. Any type of working group could be a headache to administer, but definitely worthy conversation. We also mentioned in our testimony to consider doubling the producer voices that are on this committee. Any kind of plan or implementation that affects our producers, they should be at the table and being a pretty large voice at that table. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is the Hawaii Food Industry Association.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Alexis Chapman for HFIA. We stand on our testimony in support, and we're very happy to be included in this and would be happy to participate, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. We will move on to our next testifier, Keone DeFranco. Okay. Next testifier we have is Robert Bentz.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair. I support this, and as a disabled farmer, I just would recommend if disabled producer were also involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, noting that was the last testifier. Do we have any late testimony? Okay, that's our last testifier.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead. We have a late testimony?
Yes.
All right.
So Hunter Heavlin, not here, or rather, I have late testimony on behalf of the Farmers Union, but just representing myself as a planner by training and by trade. I support very much the intent of this bill, and as has been noted in a nationwide study that concluded towards the end of 2021, 18 states, as well as an additional 10 or 11, are in the process of either already having a statewide charter or implementing some type of statewide charter or food systems plan. In each of those efforts, what has been critical to their success is a broad participation by not just experts, but also by citizens. Unlike a number of other, say, infrastructure or sector-focused plans that have been produced or that we are hoping to see come out of this legislative session, this plan affects everyone. We are all stakeholders. We all eat. And so while it is important to ensure that we have a broad selection of voices, both from industry and nonprofits, that are intimately integrated with the outcomes of this sector, it is of critical importance that we have the voices of those in the lived experience, that is to say, anyone who eats should have an opportunity to weigh in on this plan. And so for that, I would hope that we find a mechanism to expand our conceptualization of what this plan aims to accomplish and who it aims to involve in its decision making, so that we can include more of our state in its determination. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 308? Seeing none, members, any questions?
May I?
Yes, report.
The last gentleman, Farm Union?
He was
Oh, sorry.
Yes, the rest of it will.
I forgot your name. Whatever it is, please come forward. So we don't have enough farmers on the list, or what were you saying about everybody who eats should be on it? But
So the way that a number of, as a planner, right? So if you're doing a plan for agriculture, having agricultural industry and voices, land managers, et cetera, makes a lot of sense. We have a good representation there. If we're focusing a plan that is more broadly about the food system, having key, we have a long list on there already, right? From the Food Industry Association to the Farmers Union to Farm Bureau and a number of other entities. But the food system affects far greater than just those vested interests, and conceivably affects the lived experience of everyone who lives in or visits our state. And for that reason, a number of other states have chosen to have much broader public participation processes. So imagining, as we would say, the establishment of our 2050 Sustainable Development Plan or our general plans and so forth, their intent and their effort integrates as many voices as they possibly can.
How big are these on the mainland that you're talking about? You said many more. What are the numbers that they have on the?
In terms of their participation, or?
Yes.
Well, their participation is focused on not just expert-driven delineation of what the plan should be, but broadly held public participation to help shape what should happen. And I think that there is a possible interaction between an expert body, like the one that's currently listed, and a public voice to help collaboratively shape what this plan focuses on and how it goes about pursuing its goals.
So you have an amendment to add more people?
I have an amendment to add a public participation mechanism in the same way that we go about developing, at least in Oahu, our sustainable community development plans or our development plans or our general planning, as well as any other sort of plan that has the capacity to impact the lives of an entire population. And so I think part of the trouble that we face is this is I want to say an unwieldy issue, but a multifaceted one, right, as evidenced by the number of groups currently listed. But ensuring that there is an opportunity for public participation, because it will clearly have public impact, is critical to the future of the success, really, of this plan.
Chair, my last question is, do you think the public would understand what good food governance is and what food justice is?
I think in the absence of the opportunity to believe that the public or that the illustrious group currently listed in the plan are incapable of communicating that, I believe that we should surely trust that we can imbue that education process as part of that public outreach and public participation.
But many of us on this side of the table have always thought that self-sufficiency, food self-sufficiency would be one of the major goals, but none of the things that have been assigned to the group says anything about self-sufficiency.
I
thought that was one of the big goals for going back to ag.
Well, I believe that might get towards some of the education that could be needed. Right?
It says sustainable but not self-sufficient.
Well, and self-sufficient may not be resilient. To just try and sum it up in a sentence.
Self-sufficient may not be resilient.
If we grow everything that we eat and there's a disruption in what we grow, then we don't have anything to eat.
Then
right?
we go back to where we are right now, where we get 90%, then we're depending on.
And this is exactly the kind of conversation that I think we should have more public participation in and more people weighing in on. Because there's an education opportunity and an opportunity to thus collectively come to these decisions.
So you want to be on this committee, obviously.
I think I might already be on this committee. I'm proposing that the committee have a public participation process.
Thank you for your enthusiasm. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. Any more questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to HB 309. First testifier we have is Department of Agriculture.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon, Department of Agriculture. The department stands on our written testimony in support with the comment that the blank amount on page 1, line 12 be filled in with $47,700,000, and the breakdown is on the testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We stand on a written testimony in support. However, Chair, we do support Department of Agriculture and Ulupono's proposed amendments. We do have a request for one more addition. That would be Kalihivai Reservoir, asking for $10 million. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Ulupono Initiative.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Ulupono will stand on its testimony in support of this measure. We have some projects that are listed in our testimony for consideration to be put into this. Really do appreciate you hearing this measure. I think it's a great educational opportunity to highlight a lot of the systems that are under the state's purview and who they serve. The State Department of Agriculture, for example, has 5 irrigation systems and 6 reservoirs across the state that they manage, and they have to maintain and repair these systems that are 100 years plus old. very, very important for the livelihoods of our agricultural producers across the state. So really do appreciate you hearing this, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We have one individual and one organization in support of HB 309. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 309? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our next measure, HB 311. First testifier we have is the Department of Ag.
Chair, Vice Chair, Sharon, Department of Agriculture. The department stands on its written submitted testimony. In support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Department of Taxation.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, David Richmond here on behalf of the Department of Taxation. The department stands on its written testimony, offering comments and available questions.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Chair, Hawaii Farmers Union stands on its testimony in support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Robert Bentz.
Aloha. I stand on my testimony in support too. It's the GE small amount, but it adds up with all the costs for the kalo. Like, got a grant, got a tractor, and the GE was $1,000. So I appreciate this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Tax Foundation.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. One thing I wanted to emphasize, which is not in my testimony, is that there are substantial benefits that are already given to farmers. For example, the wholesale rate of 0.5% for GET is already given to materials essential to the growth or nurturing of commodities. And that would probably cover the seed, huli, and probably the chemicals, although I'm not really sure what the chemicals are for. And we also have a capital goods excise tax credit that basically refunds the GET for depreciable machinery. So that would be available to a farmer as well. In addition to that, I'll just stand on my testimony and be open for questions. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Ulupono Initiative.
Chair, we'll stand on our testimony.
Thank you. And we have two individuals in support. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 311? Okay. Seeing none, members, any questions? Report?
Is no tax here? Do you have a economic tax impact amount, even though it's ballpark, etc.?
Thank you, Rep. Ward, for the question. I do apologize, we do not have the revenue estimate. In full disclosure, for all our bills today, we do not have the revenue estimate, simply because we have so many bills that are running in the legislature.
Why am I not surprised? But you guys are really helpful if you did have that, because that's a metric that makes this thing fly or not fly. But thank you. I hope
we can provide that
could you do
to
that?
the committee. Yes.
Mr. Yamachika, do you have any numbers in place of no tax? You sounded like this is going to cost a lot of money for farmers who generally have been described as either old or poor. Are we giving them too much, or what's your point?
Thank you, Representative Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. My point is that many of these farmers already have benefits. I don't know if they know about them, but they're certainly entitled to them. The gentleman who previously testified on Zoom, like one or two testifiers before me, was talking about a tractor. That tractor would be eligible for the capital goods excise tax credit, which is a refundable credit should he choose to take it. Apparently, he didn't know about it. So we need to make sure that farmers in such are educated about the benefits that the tax law already provides.
Good, but I think that's good for the federal, but what in place of DOE taxes, not knowing, would you estimate the GT tax hit for our treasury might be?
Yeah, I don't have enough information, Representative, to do a revenue estimate. I have like no idea about the taxpayer database. That's certainly within the exclusive control of DOTAX.
Okay, DOE tax has promised to get it to us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, comments, or concerns, we're going to move on to HB 610. First testifier we have is Department of Ag.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon, Department of Agriculture, we stand on our submitted testimony and support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Department of Taxation.
Well, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, the department's not going to read testimony offering comments.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Thank you, Chair. Farmers Union stands on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We will stand in our written testimony and be available for questions.
Thank you. We have two individuals in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 610? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Ulupono Initiative was also in support on this one.
We'll stand on our testimony.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed you. With that being said, any questions, comments, concerns, members?
Same question to DOE tax, but I don't think they have it,
Okay.
correct?
We'll
Yeah.
get you the numbers.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. With no further comments, questions, or concerns, we're gonna move on to our next measure, HB 608. HB 608. I don't know if that's-
Oh, wait, 612.
612. Is there a agenda now?
Yeah.
Okay, HB 612, sorry about that. Relating to taxation, and we have Department of Ag.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon, Department of Agriculture, we stand on our submitted testimony and support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Department of Taxation.
Well, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, the department stands on its written testimony offering comments.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Hunter Hevelin, this time and again here on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union United. Stand on our written testimony in support and wanted to highlight a couple of the amendments that we put forward that will hopefully see this bill move more successfully through some of our finance committees going forward. And drawing from how a couple of other states have approached this, instead of having a refundable tax credit, trying to switch this to something that would benefit farmers still based off of their ratios of income, but switching that refundability to being a reduction of the volume of their income that they owe tax on. And so I believe, as I'd written in there, it was 15% of their net farm income could be removed if you're under $250,000, and if you're between $250,000 and $1 million in terms of your, I believe it was your net farm income, then 10% of that income would be removed, and your tax base would be then based off of that. I believe that would have a less of an impact on our tax base overall across the state, but still provide substantial support to our agricultural industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We will stand on a written testimony and be available for questions.
Thank you. We have about 5 individuals in support, as well as 1 organization in support. Is there anyone wishing to testify on HB 612? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Seeing none. With that being said, we're going to move on to our next measure, HB 608, relating to taxation. First testifier we have is Department of Ag.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Department of Agriculture stands on its submitted testimony in support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Department of Taxation.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Again, Richmond from Department of Taxation. The department stands on its written testimony, offering comments.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Farmers Union stands on our written testimony in support and would like to highlight that this is a measure that would bring some parity to the tax structure that has been in place in this state for many, many years. There is, in fact, on the books an exemption for genetically modified crop production, specifically within enterprise zones, that was proposed to be removed after a 10-year period and has now been in place for over 15. So we view this as a mechanism to bring some parity to the tax structures that are currently in place. Thank you.
Thank you. We have about we have about 5 individuals in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 608?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We have submitted written testimony. We do note that there was a previous organic foods production tax credit that the Department of Agriculture, for some reason, didn't want to administer and had delayed implementation for 3 years. So I think it behooves this committee to understand what concerns the Department of Agriculture had at that time when failing to implement that credit before you guys enacted it again. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next testifier, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
My apologies, Chair. We thought we submitted written testimony. If you don't have it, we'll make sure it gets to you, Chair, and the committee. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 608? Seeing none. Members, any questions? Report?
The Director of Agriculture, you were cited in that recent comment.
I heard that.
Any insight? that you
Yes,
could offer?
I'm not sure the respectable Tom Yamachika had reference, but the National Organic Cost Sharing Program, we handled that for quite a few years until the Department of the USDA moved that program over to the Farm Service Agency because we are the Department of Agriculture and we are one office. By moving it into the FSA, into their county offices, they provided 200 offices nationwide. In fact, in this state, we have FSA office in every county, in every island, I believe. So the National Organic Cost Sharing Program was being able to be handled much more efficiently through the USDA. Now the organic tax credit, I remember handling it in my shop, the market development shop. We did it for a number of years. The first year was a marketing issue. I believe, speaking to Una Greenway at the Hawaii Organic Farmers Association, I asked her why we only had a few applicants. The tax credit was enormous. It was $50,000 for a farmer who can verify receipts for operations to run or certify an organic farm. I mean, that's pretty substantial. My counterpart, Brian, always asks for parity with the conventional farmers, but the organic farmers, because organic was so trendy at that time. In the second year, the Hawaii Organic Farmers Association was funded with I think it was $10,000 to spread the word statewide. And that year, she did a great job. Una went everywhere promoting this tax credit to her members. And I believe that year we might have had 19 applications for the tax credit.
How many organic farmers are there?
Whew, don't know. I can ask Una how many are in her organization, unless she's probably not online, but I will get that to you.
Okay. But then how many would utilize this particular issue?
This credit?
In other words, even though it was set on the shelf for 3 years, you're saying if we pass it, you're ready to implement
Oh,
it?
absolutely, absolutely. If the marketing's in place, we'll just flip, Una Greenwood will put her team in action and they'll be out there.
That's important. Thank you very much
Mhm.
for that, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions, members? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our next measure, HB 1424. First testifier we have is Department of Ag.
The Department of Agriculture stands on its submitted testimony. Chair, Vice Chair members, in support. We do have a number that we added because one of the members, Representative Ward, likes numbers. So we're going to need a full-time staffer to handle this on behalf of the hemp industry. And the number is $85,000.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is the Department of Health.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify, Chair Gates and Vice Chair Kahaloa. My name is Laurie Nagatoshi for the Department of Health, and we stand on our written testimony and offering comments.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Gail Barber.
Yeah, aloha, Chair and Committee. Thank you. The Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association, of which I'm president, stands on its testimony and just wants to offer a couple of comments. One is the intent behind the bill, I believe, was to have this to be more of a complaint-driven process. Certainly, we support the Department of Agriculture receiving additional funds for staff. We all know they need it. But I would hate to have any kind of appropriation or concern about appropriation kill this bill, since it could be, at least initially, functionally working just through complaints. If there is ever a concern about someone not, labeling correctly, all you have to do is reach out to the manufacturer and ask for a receipt from where they received their hemp oil. We don't need a huge tracking database necessarily at this point, nor necessarily something that has a lot of forensic science behind it, at least initially. So we certainly would like to see DOA funded, but I hope that it's that funding wouldn't necessarily kill this bill, because we could certainly get this bill off the ground and things going without a position. But at the same time, I believe DOA does need a position, not only for hemp, but other origin products in this state, Macnuts coffee. You need it. And I know they did experience a number of rifts in the last couple of years. So thank you for your support. Aloha.
Mahalo. Next testifier we have is Robert Betts.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I fully support this bill. I would echo everything that Gail just said. It's pretty much, you could just do it complaints. It's a big problem. It's most of the hemp grown, it says Hawaii hemp is not grown in Hawaii. So I appreciate this bill. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Next testifier we have is Hunter Heveland. Thank you. All right, members, any questions? Oh, sorry. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1424? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions, comments, concerns? Report.
Is there a hemp expert in the group, or Brian, or you?
Gail. Sorry.
Gail?
Gail.
Gail, are you still there?
I am.
How many
Thank
hemp
you.
farmers are there?
In the state, we have licensed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to grow hemp in Hawaii. You have to be licensed by the United States Department of Agriculture. And right now there are 98 licenses, which is down by about 40 from last year. The number of farms growing, we're still in the process of calculating, but probably fewer. We have had a lot of challenges in the hemp industry, a lot of it about trying to nuance regulations. Most of the farmers are on Hawaii Island, about 44%, followed by Oahu, and then Maui, and then the other islands.
It sounds like they're not making any money.
No, we're not. As a matter of fact, most of us have lost a ton of money. A number of farmers have gone out of business. It's a much more detailed and nuanced conversation of how that ended up happening in Hawaii. I mean, certainly hemp farmers in other areas have suffered, but I'd say Hawaii has been hit especially hard. There's another bill you guys are considering with regards to a task force to, I think, facilitate conversation amongst the industry and the agencies that will help get to the bottom of some of the policy problems we've had in the state regarding hemp. I will say, and I will pat the state on the back, saying that, you know, we really were leading the way for quite a while, even 20 years ago with regards to hemp, and we just fell behind the last 6 years. So,
are you saying overregulation or too many or not?
Yeah, and I know in the testimony there's a little bit of a difference of opinion about that, but I mean, if you look closely at the rules, yeah, from the very beginning, our pilot program was set up differently than all the other pilot programs in the country with regard to testing, which made it exceedingly hard for our farmers, but we managed to survive despite that. And again, that's kind of a nuanced conversation around laboratories and levels of compounds and whatnot. So right out of the bat, we weren't able to make money like most of the other farms. And then a couple of years ago, because the state was going through, you know, financial crunch time like other folks, Hawaii farmers were put under the USDA for regulating production. So in addition to the working with USDA and the sampling and the managing the database and inputs, we also have rules at the state level regarding sampling and inspections, which I don't think have actually been implemented. But the way the rules are stated, if the state ever decides to do an inspection on the farms, we'd have to pay for that in addition to the federal inspections and sampling that are done. We love the fact that actually the Department of Health has regulated us pretty heavily on the labeling and testing side. We have very, very high standards, the highest standards for seaweed products in the country. We like that because it sets our products aside from other states. It is, of course, much more expensive, but we're not asking for any adjustment on that. So
and the origin of the other hemp has been a problem because they are like maybe Kona coffee being too much aggressive, or the majority?
Well, you know, one of my farm's competitors is Kona Gold out of Florida. You know, there's Aloha CBD that uses oil from North Carolina. You know, so and we're not necessarily asking for a bunch of forensic science on this. And certainly the last thing farmers need is another realm of or another amount of paperwork and tracking to go through to register to prove that their product is an origin of Hawaii. But at least if we set some bar out there in a minimal complaint-driven rule, you know, consumers will then have the ability to differentiate between products. When I'm at the farmer's market, and there are, you know, CBD is really popular. I mean, even though most of the products aren't legal yet in the state, I know you guys see it everywhere. But I'll have tourists come up and say, oh my gosh, I wished I'd known there was actually a Hawaii product, because when we talk to them, they find out that, you know, there's only about 6 farmer brands in the state. So to be able to have that differentiation on the label is, I think it's helpful to consumers, and those of us who want to not voluntarily, that will do it, it will help us. There are labeling requirements right now that I can tell you most of the CBD brands and hemp products in the state do not comply with, and there's no enforcement on it. And that's not DOH's fault. They just don't have the ability to do it. These brands don't have the correct font size. They don't refer to the labeling that's required, and they certainly don't have the laboratory analysis behind their products that's required to sell in this state. So the reason why I share all that is I don't want this bill to be shot down on, you know, I don't want to say nitpicky, but on small minor things. Having this bill go forward, even if it's kind of there's no enforcement behind it initially, will help us. So
Not nitpicking, but is it accurate on lines 4 and 5 of the bill that there is 50,000 uses of hemp? 50,000, not 5,000, 50,000.
Absolutely, it's amazing. I mean, this plant goes back tens of thousands of years. I mean, I can't remember the exact date, but there are textiles used in Asia tens of thousands years ago. And, you know, and I mean, all of us probably have had enough granola with hemp seeds in it. It's an incredible food, an incredible plant. There are so many projects going on right now across the state exploring how to use hemp in building materials as a sustainable building material. And this, one of the issues though, is that, well, it's another bill in terms of trying to get an exemption to allow fiber farmers to be able to produce more quickly instead of following some of the CBD rules. But part of the issue is most of the hemp for those projects, and some of these include affordable housing projects, is being imported from Canada and the mainland, and yet they're touting these projects as, you know, sustainable homegrown kind of it's great. We want hemp housing, and sometimes it has to be proofed with materials from outside the state. But these types of benchmarks in terms of rules and regulations do help project managers and other people who want to be in the hemp industry reach out to farmers and try to find a way to partner and really make it truly, you know, a Hawaii hemp house as opposed to a hemp house.
The last part of the accuracy of the bill, it says that hemp growing is a lucrative crop. I think from your testimony, it's to be realized lucrative.
Yeah, not in Hawaii. It hasn't been so far. It certainly has been in many places across the U.S. And the fiber and fuel and food part is beginning to really take hold across the U.S. and certainly other places across the world. I mean, this plant's been out there forever. And one of the really fascinating things, and I need to educate myself more about this, is the fact that the cells in the hemp plant are incredibly efficient in transferring electrons back and forth. They can actually replace, I think is it graphene? I forget. It's a mined mineral in supercapacitors. If I had some extra money, and I don't because I've been hemp farming, but if I had extra money, I would be investing in that type of research and companies that are doing that. This plant is truly amazing.
We've learned something, that hemp is in AI and other things of our future. Thank you very much for getting us down into the weeds. That's very interesting.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking the time to listen. Aloha.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns, members? Seeing none, we're going to move on to HB 1270 relating to hemp.
First testifier is Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. We stand on our submitted testimony in support, and we look forward to working with the hemp farmers on this measure.
Thank you. We have Department of Health.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Kahaloa. Lori Nagatoshi with the Health Department. We stand in our written testimony in support, and we also look forward to sitting on a task force committee. Thank you.
Mahalo. We have Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Hawaii Farm Bureau stand on its written testimony in support.
Mahalo. On Zoom, we have Gail Faber again.
Yeah, thank you. The Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association supports this bill and will stand on our testimony. Thank you very much. Aloha.
Robert Benz on Zoom.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Robert Benz, lifelong farmer. This is very important for me as a USDA licensed hemp grower. They've been very helpful and responsive. The only grower of hemp that I noticed wasn't on the committee would be hemp microgreens. There's probably 500,000 uses, so I know I couldn't put everybody on there. But hemp microgreens is being done by other states, and it's kind of made difficult in Hawaii. So I could grow it, could send it to other states. It's not very sustainable. And with the microgreens, it doesn't have the ability to form enough cannabis to have any THC, and it doesn't have the time to be tested. So USDA would help develop a process that we'd go through. But the current rules, so if there's any other relief that could be done before this task force, but microgreens is healthy, and we all have an endocannabinoid system inside of us. And for me, I had a brain surgery from a birth defect, so hemp has been very helpful. And instead of buying hemp seeds from Costco, and that comes from Manitoba, Canada, or Europe, could be growing and selling local hemp microgreens. So if that could be added to the task force, sometimes I know a task force needs odd numbers, and flower market of cannabis hemp is probably the most regulated. So there's so many cannabinoids or terpenes. Adding one of those to the task force would also probably be beneficial.
Thank you.
But I support this bill. Mahalo.
Mahalo. All right, we have 19 other individuals in support, 1 in opposition. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1270? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions?
Chair, could I call-
Rep. Ward?
The hemp farmer, could you come back? You just finished. If this bill passes, is it going to allow you to make a little more money? Or let me put it this way, are you making any money as a hemp farmer?
When I had brain surgery was when I first was at Stanford. I was getting brain surgery. I was writing comments when the legislature first was doing the hemp. And Scott Enright was back in 2016. And I am a very diversified farmer, and looking at the market, it didn't look profitable in any way.
How many acres of hemp do you have?
The export, the buffer zone limits my acreage, total acreage to under an acre.
Under an acre?
Yeah, the buffer zone that's why the microgreens would be kind of a niche market, because you can produce a large amount in a smaller space. So that is another huge. Also, USDA told me that they regulate growing. So it seems like from talking to them, the buffer zone was more their jurisdiction. Also the Right to Farm Act. But that is a big reason why. Also, I'm very passionate about growing food. So because my uncle, everybody said, oh, focus on flour, because exporting the flour and the finished products, because the Hawaii laws, it's pretty much more difficult to sell within the state than it is to export. So I would have to there's a vacuum cooling place down the road. I could go to the vacuum cooling, I could export it, but the current laws with movement, it would limit my ability to sell to a local health food store that would be very interested in selling the product. The current laws would
Thank you for
that
taking the time to testify, and you're proving that the Zoom system gets more input at the Capitol than it would otherwise. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I
Thank
lost
you.
the ability to talk, so I am appreciative of the ability to talk. Even though I can't talk as I used to, I appreciate your time, and I very much appreciate Cynthia Thielen and her efforts on this.
Thank you for your testimony and your comments on Gene Ward's questions. I will ask if anyone else has any comments, questions, concerns. Seeing none, we're going to move on to our next measure, HB 973, relating to hemp. First testifier we have is Department of Ag.
Chair, Vice Chair members, this is an admin bill for the Department of Agriculture, and we stand in strong support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Hemp Association, Farmers Hemp Association.
Yeah, aloha, this is Gail Burnbaber for Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association. Yeah, as I understand, this bill is eliminating nuisance clause that were basically developed to target one particular farm on Maui around one particular incident. I visited that farm last year. The noise coming off of it, I don't live there, I'm not a neighbor, but the time I visited was less than a weed eater. So these rules were developed and have targeted all the hemp farmers on all the islands, even though there has been no other incident regarding nuisance in the state. So it's time to repeal these. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Robert Benz.
Aloha. This farm is right down the road from our farm, and I kind of felt bad for the neighbors because that farm, they just came in from California and started growing. But on the other hand, the farm, even though they're from California, the neighbors are also not from here. I feel like if you grow up in here, you kind of learn to get along with each other, and we wouldn't have any of this. But this little issue between that farm and their neighborhood group that got all upset, it seems like it's destroying all hemp for all the state, because that their buffer zone, that makes it a pretty much non-starter, and it's a huge buffer zone. And so there's a Right to Farm Act that I thought would already stop that from being a problem. These gentleman farms where people want to have parties and they're upset that the noise or the smells or whatever from a real farm. Like the earlier testimony, there was possibility of a pig farm. There could be a lot of offensive farms, and it's also very overblown. I don't think, I've never seen hemp cause any noxious odors or noise beyond any other farming. So I definitely strongly support the repeal of any buffer zones or any additional regulations, because there's already so much, like there's new USDA training that you have to go through. There's so much regulations for this crop, so I beg the legislature to please help the farmers. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Noting we have two more individuals in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 973? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our HB 976 relating to hemp special fund. First testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau. Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
For the first time.
I know. It was just
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. The Executive Director is correct. It is an admin bill, and we stand in strong support.
Thank you. Noting that was the only testifier that we have on our list. Any late testimony, Vice Chair? No. Okay. Seeing none. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our next measure, HB 657, relating to agriculture. First testifier we have is Department of Agriculture.
Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon, Department of Agriculture, we stand on our submitted testimony.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau was down on its written testimony in support of this bill.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Hemp Farmers.
Yeah, aloha, Gail Byrne-Baber with Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association again. We support this bill, but we need it to be, if you don't mind, amended to address the following facts: that most of the hemp farmers are on Hawaii Island and Oahu, and then Maui. So we'd like to support what the Department of Agriculture is asking for, which is, I believe, a consultant to come in and do some planning around this. But we would like to expand the scope of that planning to, I'm just going to read a paragraph that we submitted directly to the committee. For the Department of Agriculture to hire a consultant to work with the Hawaii hemp farmers to identify the infrastructure needs of Hawaii's hemp farmers and hemp industry, considering the unique needs and geographic spread of Hawaii's licensed hemp farmers and the various hemp sector needs. The consultant shall submit their findings via concise outline of recommended infrastructure by island. The outline shall include schematics showing the various processing steps and infrastructure needed from harvest to product for various sectors with approximate costs per infrastructure component, sizing and capacity, and option versus fixed, and approximate square footage. Without that type of amendment, I'm afraid that we really need to do a needs assessment first of the industry in Hawaii. And although we all have a sense of what we need per island, I think starting with a large decorticator on Maui may not be the best thing. We need to step back and take a look at what does the hemp industry and all the farmers need. And maybe just a mobile decorticator would be just fine. And we've had wonderful conversations with Senator, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, McKelvey, who I believe brought this bill forward in both the House and Senate. And he's in complete support of what the hemp farmers would like to do in terms of mending or deferring or whatever. But what we'd like to do is see it amended to reflect a consultant be hired to work with farmers on all the islands and looking at all the various sectors with very specific output that we can hopefully help the DOA word when they go out for the RFP for the consultant. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any late testimony, Fisher? Okay. Seeing no late.
Can I testify on support of this as well? I didn't do my written testimony, but I just wanted to say I support this bill.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
Mahalo. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on HB 657? Seeing none. Any questions, comments, concerns? Go ahead, Rep. Ward.
Someone who can describe a hemp facility here or on this call?
Let me give it
What
a
does it
try.
look like,
Representative,
Madam
let me
Director?
give it, I'm sure Brian can help me with this. I was just out there on Saturday, as a matter of fact,
What is
trying to
it?
learn more about hemp. The facility that I visited was not interested in CBD at all. They were mostly interested in the fiber and the fuel. The fuel piece needs cold chain. The decorticator is going to shred it up. They can make hempcrete, they can make hemp wood, they can make hemp flooring. So the facility is being built out now, but it is an industrial hemp facility for processing of hemp.
So the machine shred it and smash it, or?
It separates the parts.
Separates all the different strands.
Right, the hemp stalk is about yay big. It goes in and it gets shredded up.
Can they weave it into rope, hemp rope?
Sure, yes, but the facility that I visited was not interested in rope. They were more for industrial hempcrete, blocks of cement. And as Gail mentioned earlier, the lastability of this product is incredible. It goes back down to Egyptian times, pyramids. It doesn't burn. So if you make a house out of the wood, it's burn resistant. It's tremendous. I think Representative Cochran has seen this.
50,000 options. Here's the bigger question. How much does it cost to build one of those?
I think the number they said was between 5 and 10 million. But this is a public-private partnership through the Whitmore Village, so there's opportunities for both sides.
So to have one
Can I offer some comments on that?
Well, hold on 1 second. I want to ask one more. The number of hemp farmers on the Big Island versus Maui, because this facility is going on Maui. At least according to my
That I
reading of
don't
the bill.
have, but Gail probably knows. She said 197 with Hawaii having like 40% of them, so.
Off to Gail, is it Gail? Gail,
Mhm.
do you have
Yeah,
how
yeah,
many farmers
yeah.
on the Big Island versus Maui?
Yeah, my apologies, Sharon, for jumping in. I'm
No,
so
please.
enthusiastic about them. Yeah, I just wanted to say there's all sorts sizes of hemp processing facilities, and a decorticator is only one piece. You also need to think about baling and storage, and so that's why I think a little bit more comprehensive study looking at the needs across the geographics and across the sectors is going to be most helpful, because there are initiatives that have started on Kauai, a little bit on Oahu, none on Hawaii Island, and we have the most hemp farmers. So there are 44% of the hemp farmers are on Hawaii Island, 29 on Oahu, 23
How many
on
on Maui? What percentage?
and 23%, I'm sorry, 44% are on Hawaii Island,
Big Island.
29% on Oahu, and 23% on Maui. And there are various sizes of decorticators. Like I said, it might make more sense to have a mobile decorticator that can go from farm to farm, depending on what type of end product you're looking at. So this is the intent behind this bill is wonderful, and it is so incredible to be here at the legislature this session and see such forward-thinking people in hemp. But I think we just need to pace this bill with the realities of what's on the ground and expand the geographic scope to include the other islands and some of the other sectors.
What did you call a mobile what?
Decorticator.
A mobile decorticator. They have them about the size of, they're smaller than even half a container. So it really, large decorticator facilities require vast amounts of hemp to be grown continually. And that may make sense, and some private people may be planning that out. And because hemp crops can be grown for multiple purposes, sometimes when you look at the infrastructures and facilities, you may want that infrastructure to include multiple purposes. So that's why I'm saying if we just pick Maui and just pick a large decorticator, I don't know, I haven't studied the situation, but I do know enough about the diversity of the Hawaii hemp industry and what's going on and what's being planned that I think we need to just take a minute and look at what are the options around the islands and various sizes.
Are you saying that there's a $5 million factory, Maui is not going to be able to use it to its capacity, or the big? No, I'm not.
It takes. I'm not saying that because I don't know what the future holds. But and sometimes you have to sometimes back engineer, right? And oftentimes what's best to do. My background's in civil engineering. Sometimes what's good to do is plan infrastructure that can be done in series or parallel, right? Start with smaller, but then you can duplicate that. So I think this warrants the DOA hiring a good consultant, and there are consultants out there that do this type of work, that look at sectors within a state and identify from seed to the end product, provide the schematics of what the infrastructure is and the approximate cost, depending on what the volume of hemp production may be. And from there, you can begin to size what infrastructure, that's basically needs assessment around infrastructure. So that would be my terminology. That's what needs to be done more of on a statewide basis, not specific to Maui, and not specific necessarily to decorticator, although decorticator is probably going to be an important tool on all the islands.
Thank you very much for that insight. Yes, Madam
Representative, may I glance over at the subject matter expert to see if he has anything to add?
If he's a cornicator.
Nope, he says no.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With no further comments, questions, or concerns, we're going to move on to our next measure, HB 1248. First testifier we have is Department of Ag.
Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kahaloa, members of the committee. This bill is very important to the people of Hawaii, and we stand in strong support. As stated in our written testimony, it's for the Bucks program. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support.
I like your shirt and support as well.
Thank you.
Moving to our next testifier, Hawaii Public Health Institute.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Peggy Mirza with the Hawaii Public Health Institute. We're in strong support of HB 1248, which is the Bucks program. Right now, more than 57 retailers in 98 markets are participating, and the retailers have gone from issuing 978,000 to 1.66 million in benefits in this. For 3 years, the program's relied heavily on nonprofits and philanthropic communities, so this would be a time when the state could come and really help to grow this program more. If the state were to provide $3 million, that would mean there would be a match of up to $3 million by the feds. But most importantly, to us, people are eating more healthy foods, and that's really important. It's important for their overall wellness, and it helps them to lower their chances of obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, and so on. So we stand in strong support of this measure and want to thank all the partners who have really worked very hard on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Okimoto Corp. In support, we have the Food Basket.
Aloha, Chair Gates. Ooh, there's echo. and members of the committee. My name is Chelsea Takahashi. I'm the Director of Healthy Food Access Initiatives at the Food Basket. We strongly support HB 1248 and the appropriation of $3 million per year for the continued administration of the DeBucks program. I've been one of the lead administrators for the DeBucks program since 2017. The Food Basket has taken the lead in applying for these federal GusNIP grants to fund the program. To date, we've secured 4 GusNIP awards totaling $9 million in federal dollars. Additionally, 3 of those 4 grants had 100% non-federal matching requirement, so we also secured $4 million in match that came largely from philanthropy. We humbly request the state to invest in the long-term sustainability of the DeBucks program and its ability to provide affordable food access. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is the Hawaii Food Bank.
Aloha again, Chair Gates and Vice Chair Kahaloa and members of the committee. I also want to share from the food bank's perspective just how important SNAP is to our anti-hunger work and how the DeBucks program responds to needs expressed by the communities we serve. Nationally, for every meal a food bank provides, SNAP provides 9, and DeBucks stretches this critical benefit even further. And on the local level, when we hear from our network of partners, food pantries and soup kitchens, the top request that they are hearing for the people we serve is fresh produce and healthy proteins. So we work to meet this through distribution, thanks to our many farm partners, but DeBucks puts money in people's pockets. It gives choice, it gives purchasing power, and it supports the health and well-being of the people in our communities. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Next testifier we have is Ulupono Initiative.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Micah Munikata here on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We'll stand on our written testimony in strong support of this measure. You'll see in our written testimony we have some statistics within here, but basically showing that the need to meet food security is still here within our state. SNAP eligible recipients continues to rise consistently since 2019. There's a lot of great work that's being done out there within our community, and this particular DeBucks program is one of the great benefits that exists here. It's already a program established within the Department of Ag. It's continuing to show a lot of success rate. It's often referred to as the triple win, right? It's supporting our SNAP eligible, the needy, with local fresh food. It's supporting our local producers with additional markets, and it's keeping money here within the state of Hawaii. So really it is a triple win. I think the wonderful folks at the Hawaii Food Basket, they're a little modest, but they've been very, very successful at locking down federal matching dollars within this program. Something very important to state, so that although this bill seeks to put state monies towards this program, there's a very, very solid chance that Food Basket's going to get the federal match, which is a 1-to-1 with this program. There's still a lot of interest within philanthropic and private side to support this program. However, we do feel like it's about time for the state to put a hefty investment into such a great program that really helps the community here in Hawaii. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is the American Heart Association.
Aloha, Rep. Gates. Mahalo and members of the committee, mahalo for this opportunity. American Heart Association stands in strong support of this measure and also recommends that the blanks be filled in with the $3 million ask. I just want to point, you have my testimony, I just want to point out a few key parts of my testimony, and that is that nutrition insecurity is a big issue in our state. Even those who qualify and receive SNAP funding don't necessarily have enough to feed their family with the fruits and vegetables that they really need. And fresh produce is a key portion. It's one of the life's essential aid, as the Heart Association has designated it as one of the key factors in reducing risk for cardiovascular diseases, which is the #1 cause of death and disability in our state, and a major cause of healthcare costs. The pandemic just increased those needs even more. I also want to point out, because I've spoken to a few legislators who were concerned about growing government. I want to point out that the majority of SNAP recipients who are eligible to work do so still work while on the program. And it just underscores that SNAP recipients are using the program to overcome underemployment or temporary job loss. And so I just, this additional funding would allow us to not allow the coordinators of the DeBucks program to not only expand it, but to sustain it as well. It's been very popular. The only reason why it's not available geographically everywhere in our state is because if they were to expand geographically to all areas, the money would run out too quickly, and then no one would have access to it. So we need additional funds to be added, and to both grow it to areas that aren't covered, but also to sustain the program for the next few years, and to draw down the federal funding that would be available to us. So mahalo for this opportunity. We hope you'll support the bill.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Food Industry Association.
Good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Alexis Chapman for HFIA. We stand on our testimony in support, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Next testifier we have on this measure is Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Hunter Hevelin here on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union United. We'd like to stand in strong support of our written testimony, and also to highlight that I think it is a high time for this bill and the level of support from the state articulated within it to come about. Previously, there had been support for some of those matching funds in earlier legislation. Some of that match was actually made unavailable during COVID, which left the food basket in particular on the hook for coming up with matching those federal funds. And so I think that highlights, one, maybe that there's some things that need to happen in terms of how our emergency management gets managed, especially if critical food for families seeking support is not going to be as available because funding for that explicit program becomes unavailable during COVID, but also to just highlight as a rationale, right, that this is a high time and long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on HB 1248? Okay, I want to thank my Vice Chair Kahaloa for introducing this measure. This measure has the most testimony on today's agenda. We have 37 individual and organizations in addition to those that testified, all in support. Any questions, comments, concerns, members? Quick question from Gene Ward. Go ahead.
Madam Director, I learned this morning that the body mass index for America's youth went down because of the food program that I think was either the White, maybe Michelle Obama or someone that said eating good food makes you healthier. Is this program related to that program?
It is in the sense that during the pandemic, the food box to family distribution program focused on getting food to families. It addresses the same demographic, the food insecure. But then Vilsack, when Secretary Vilsack was reappointed, he said, now that we're feeding everybody, let's focus on nutrition. So the goal now is to feed healthy food to the families in the distribution programs, such as SNAP.
So it's following that it does have results. I mean, body mass index is a hard thing.
It is, and I cannot speak on behalf of that because the Department of Health still feels that obesity is a huge problem in the state. Sure. So in the state particularly, so if it has gone down, yay, but I can't testify that it's something that I can measure from the department.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, members? I don't think so. It's a great bill. We're going to move forward on to our next measure, HB 275. First testifier we have is Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, we stand on our written testimony in support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Attorney General.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Jody Yee for the Department of the Attorney General. We had some concerns regarding the standards and we added some language in our testimony, so we hope that you will kindly consider that. I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we will definitely take your amendments into consideration. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support, and thank you for not addressing the BMI issue to me.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Union United.
Thank you, Chair. We'll stand on our written testimony in support.
Thank you. We have about 5 individuals in support. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 275? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none.
Chair, could we ask the Attorney General why she's reading this as something that may be questionable? Why are you citing the Constitution and saying that no grant of public money or property shall be made except pursuant to standards provided by law? Why would this bill go afoul of that, or if at all, at that?
Representative, our concern is that the bill as drafted does not provide enough, or might not provide sufficient standards so that the department can implement it as drafted. And so we suggested some sample language, but of course the committee could amend to create more specific standards.
But standards, you mean what? What kind of standards according to law for agricultural grants? What are the give me something that this doesn't meet as a grant. It's an agriculture grant, and you say it doesn't meet all the standards. Where does it fall short of that? Because grants are usually pretty straightforward stuff. It's free money, basically. So to get the Constitution involved is a little bit strange for me.
So our department has interpreted it that the standards need to be in the language of the bill. And I have drafted on the back at the end of my testimony, some sample standards, such as the grant shall be used exclusively for the purposes of the program. The applicant shall comply with all applicable federal and state laws.
You got 8 of them, actually, I see.
Yes, yes.
8 of them. So we should put all those 8 in, otherwise there's going to be a problem with you guys.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we're going to move on to HB 975. First testifier we have is Department of Ag. Think via Zoom.
Thank you. Pardon?
I think we had somebody via Zoom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Greg, you there? Just checking. Okay. Oh, Greg's here. Okay. Greg, I think you're muted.
My mic goes backwards.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kahaloa, members of the committee. Greg Takashima here, Acting Pesticides Program Manager. I am here with the Department of Agriculture, and I am here and available for answers to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you to the Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support. We believe this is just a housekeeping measure.
Okay, thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Thank you, Chair. We'll stand in support of our written testimony and highlight that this is what the AG's office was getting at, as we have recently come to understand.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 individuals in support. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 975? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to HB 619. First testifier we have is Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Chair Gates, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon, Department of Agriculture. We do comment that we're concerned about the resources needed for the department to responsibly establish and administer this very complex tax credit. We defer to the Department of Taxation and stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Attorney General.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members. Josh Michaels, Deputy Attorney General. You have our written testimony. We'd just like to note the potential constitutional issue as well as our suggested amendments, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Department of Taxation.
Thank you, Chair. Department stands on its written testimony.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony and support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Chair and members, would like to stand on our written testimony and support and highlight a couple of the amendments that we've written in as well. While support the intent to have this as a measure to explicitly benefit smallholders, I believe the ultimate beneficiaries of this type of a program should be those seeking additional food resources and increased food access. And for that reason, we recommend the expansion of this credit to all farms, not just those under 250,000. Also want to highlight that there may be issues, particularly in the administration of food access programming, where prepared foods can require a fair amount of additional, say, cold storage and tracking, as well as ensured there being assurances that they were produced in certified kitchens in many cases. So the removal of that provision may make things easier. We'd also like to advocate for the establishment of a rollover for excess credit value year over year, as well as highlighting a couple of other states and how they have administered this program, particularly in mechanisms that might reduce some of the onerous nature that's currently written into how Department of Agriculture, as well as some of the paperwork Department of Taxation might need to produce. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Noting we have additional support from 5 individuals. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 619? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions?
Sure, yeah.
Go ahead.
Brian, Farm Bureau, please. Brian, have we set the bar too high? This says you have 250,000 as your openers to qualify. How many of your farmers are making 250,000 in sales? What percentage?
I think maybe 75. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Representative, maybe 75%. They track, usually tracks 100,000 to I believe 500,000. So majority of our farmers are small farmers. So what is it? 12% of the farms account for about 90% of the sales. So I appreciate Farmers Union including everybody, because quite frankly, the larger farmers are the ones that have been providing the majority of, I think during the pandemic. Majority of the produce, the small farmers are the large number of participants, but as far as these distributions, a lot of times it is the larger farmers with scale, because the food banks, food basket, they do want scale, but small farmers are included. So if the legislature is going to agree to all farmers, we love to see that, but that cost may go up, and so there may be some new calculations and some new thresholds within the bill.
So this would be more for the big boys then?
No, it's everybody.
I mean,
what Farmers Union is what I believe what they're advocating for is not to have a $250,000 cap as far as the threshold. It's right now, I believe the bill says 250,000 and less. Right?
Would any taro farmers fit into this?
Well, if you're going 0 to whatever the top is, absolutely. Everybody. They're advocating for all farmers.
Okay, so you're in favor of getting rid of the cap?
Oh, we would love to see all small farmers. It's just in the past, whenever there's been small farm tax credits, it's actually been like $25,000. But this is a little bit different because it deals with donations to the food banks and community feeding programs, and that's why I'm probably wearing my food bank shirt. Again, the problem or the need was there before the pandemic. It was highlighted during the pandemic, and it's still there. There's still food distributions and needs, and food banks still play critical roles to help our neighbors, our friends, and our families. So absolutely. We love seeing the increase in local produce and proteins within these food bank programs, and any assistance to both the farmers and to these organizations, I think will help grow that program.
Thank you, Brian. We'll talk about your BMI later. Being that you brought it up.
Actually, Brian, could I get you back up there real quick? So just to clarify, the bill going back to the 250,000 or less that donate eligible food products or prepared food to food banks or food pantries. So the cap would be for, this is targeting small farmers. Is there anything that exists for medium to large farms to take advantage of these types of tax credits? And why wouldn't we want to include them in this type of tax credit?
Thank you, Chair. Brian Miyamona here about the Hawaii Farm Bureau. I think that's what Hawaii's Farmers Union's testimony was regarding to. It's just that the title of the bill or the measures talks about small farmers. If that's the case, we just should remove it, and we agree, remove it. All farmers. If we really want to support our food bank programs, why wouldn't we give this incentive to all farmers so that they're more willing to participate? Again, with the small farm kind of caveat within the bill, that's where, the $250,000, I think they wanted the cap, but even at that amount, that's majority of those farms will fall under that 250,000. There's not very many farms that would be over that 250,000. So we would love to see. Again, we don't know what the fiscal impact is going to be, but at the end of the day, as a policy decision to support our friends and families and our neighbors in need, absolutely open it up to all farmers so we can encourage all farmers to participate in food bank programs.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our last measure, HB 247, relating to agriculture. First testifier we have is Department of Ag.
Thank you. The Department of Agriculture stands by its submitted testimony in support, and we offer a comment that while it is easy to support local food production, we do defer to the state departments that were affected by this measure.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Department of Education.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Kurt Otoguro, Deputy Superintendent, testifying on behalf of the Department of Education. Department supports the overall concept of HB 247. There's no question about that, but we respectfully have to oppose this particular measure. We have concerns with regard to capacity, as well as now we're adding 4 more departments to go after the same local food supply suppliers, and there's just a lot of question with regard to that. We don't see any measures that would require the farmers to produce the capacity that we need for 5 state agencies. So happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your testimony. We're going to move on to Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. I'm going to utilize all of the time that I stood for this particular bill. I'm just joking. We support this measure, and we believe the intent of this measure is to align the goals of both Act 175 and 176 of 2021. It does, for example, I believe Act 175 sets a goal of 30% local purchase by the DOE. It's specifically a farm-to-school bill by 2030. And as a reminder, that is about 7 years from now, but we believe DOE will hit that number. But Act 176, I believe, requires for all the state departments that are required by that particular law to achieve 18%. So again, it doesn't align. You've got 2 different requirements for the DOE, specifically for the DOE. But what it also does was increase the subsequent years, increases the amount that the goal sets for 2030, 2040, 2050, I believe up to 2050. So we do hear the Department of Education's concerns, and that would be a concern if there's enough produce, if there's enough local food products out there. So that's why we continue to come before the legislature, ask for positive policies to grow agriculture. Because in order for us to meet these goals, we're going to need to support our farmers, land, water, labor, invasive species, transportation, energy costs. All of those are going to need to be addressed in order for us to achieve these particular goals. We do have a concern. I think the University of Hawaii brought it up, and I'm not sure if it's been clarified. For the University of Hawaii, for their vendors, say something like Starbucks, if they're required to meet those goals, I'm not sure if that was clarified versus Sodexo, being the ones that need to meet that goal. So the University of Hawaii, I think, has previously testified that there may be some challenges with their vendors on campus to achieve those goals that's set within Act 176. So we do support the measure. We do support the increased use of the local produce and farm-to-state programs, but we do ask for continued support for positive agriculture policies for our farmers and ranchers. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Public Health Institute.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you. My name is Dennis Chase, and I am the Program Manager for the Farm to School Hui at Hawaii Public Health Institute. We are testifying in strong support of this bill, and in addition to the percentage requirements that we've already heard of, this bill does also require some annual reporting requirements that are broken down by certain marketing channels that will give us more details as to what the different state agencies are doing. And that could maybe be helpful in planning out how they can get to that 30% and in different areas so they don't bid against each other, as I think the Deputy Superintendent was talking about. And it also requires corrective action plans to the legislature if they don't meet the goals or if they look like they might be in danger of not meeting the goals. So I think that's very important for accountability to you and to the people of the state. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We're going to move on to our next testifier. We have Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Hunter Hevelin. We'd like to stand on in support of our written testimony, advocating for the passage of this measure, and view this as an important mechanism to increase financial opportunities and market opportunities for our producers across the state, as well as an important mechanism to ensure that there is some responsiveness on the part of some of the departments who are being covered by this measure, not just as a stick, but ideally some mechanism so that those of us in the industry can better understand what the issues are with achieving these goals and how we might best help hasten their realization going forward. It was not included in our testimony, but in related efforts in another testimony that does emphasize different market channels, there was some confusion around the definition of broadline distributors, and so if of interest, we can provide the written testimony for that measure, which offers a different definition of distributor, but again, just clarifying whether it's direct from the farmer, from a food hub, which would effectively being an aggregator explicitly focused on local products, versus any other kind of distributor that's bringing in goods from anywhere. Thank you for the opportunity. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. We have next testifier, Keone DeFranco. Okay, we're gonna move on. I think that was the last testifier that indicated they would be present to testify. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 247? Ulupono?
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Mike Munikata here on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We stand on our testimony and support. We have a couple comments. Any way in which we can support our farmers with additional markets, we're better served as a state as a result. The institutional purchasing that comes with this bill and really building off of Act 176 from 2021 is very important to the future of agriculture here in the state. It sends market signals to producers. It gives them a market that they can produce and achieve towards. So I think that there's a lot that can be said around agriculture meeting the needs that arrive from such a measure. I think this bill is more of a housekeeping type measure to kind of align some of the different goals that were passed in 2021. We do think that it's something to consider when we look at this large effort, because it is a large effort from institutions to consider these things, is to really put together a strategic plan from each of the departments. We do think that there are going to have to be some massive changes on how we do procurement and how we look at how we want to purchase from our local producers. Is it more regionalized? Is it a centralized approach? I mean, all of those things need to be considered, and we really need to have data-based decisions when we do those things, because it is quite a lot of money and it is big big difference in how we do our meal programs here within the state. So really hoping that we can consider some of that strategic plan direction. I know that there's a lot of discussion around plans this session. I think it should be implemented into something like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 247? Seeing none, members, any questions? Okay, seeing. Rep Ward.
I yield to anyone else. But I want to talk to the DOE. I have a question for the DOE. You have the biggest food court in the state of Hawaii. With the consumption and the capacity that you have, this should be hopefully in the future a no-brainer. But right now, according to the superintendent Hayashida, hey, don't support this too much too quick. Is this a supply problem, a consumption problem, a bureaucratic problem? What's standing in the way of you saying, yeah, I want this bill, let's do it?
Thank you for that question, Rep. Ward. It's a capacity issue. That's all it is. And then there's going to be a prioritization side that I can't address right now. So, for example, we're adding hospitals, prisons, as well as the schools. So local providers have to provide, right? Otherwise, because we have meals.
So capacity, you mean the farmers just aren't going to?
From a farmer's perspective,
They don't
right?
have it.
Today, no. Some of the large ones may have some, but when you talk statewide, now you have 5 state agencies buying the same thing. So we're going to run out at some point. And so we need to work with our good friends at the Hawaii Farm Bureau. There's more collaboration that needs to take place. The bill is very specific to goals, and so the accountability on the state agencies are there. But what about how do we ensure that when we agree to these terms and goals and years that we provided that capacity, that the need to serve our kids or people who are in inmates or hospital people. That's really what it is. We absolutely support this intent and the concept of HB 247.
Thank you, sir. The Director of Ag is my final question. The ball is in your court, madam. Supply and demand, generally it's where, we just don't have enough demand. What we're saying in the words of the DOE at least, hey, give us the food, we'll buy it. But if you don't provide it, what do your farmers need in order to get the food which has already got a market and a price for it?
Thank you for the question, Representative Ward. It's more than just, sorry to say, it's more than just a supply-demand issue. It's a procurement issue. It's a geographic preference issue. It's a federal
Okay, that's a
fair and equal.
management and a bureaucracy issue.
Correct. But to answer your question, the farmers can certainly produce sufficient quantities of food, but not for the whole state. If there is a need for tomatoes, one farmer cannot produce 45,000 pounds of it. It's called on demand, indefinite quantity, indefinite time. So you write a contract, you say, I'm going to supply you 45,000 pounds of tomatoes. I need 20,000 pounds tomorrow. We don't have that.
Impossible. I was thinking only of the DOE. The other ones, if the DOE can't do it, all these other ones are not going to be able to do it. That was
yeah.
my sense of it.
I think the hospitals might have a better chance.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Brian, can I ask you again? Look, you got a great marketing opportunity here. You've got a market that's just waiting to be filled. What, to your way of thinking, is the missing piece in this entrepreneurial effort that, to me, looks more complicated than it otherwise should be?
Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Scale. Food hubs are going to hopefully address some of that, aggregating with the small farmers, but we need our small farmers to become medium-sized farmers. We need our medium-sized farmers to become large farmers. Large farmers aren't bad. We need scale. In order to provide the food, it is a supply issue, as a deputy superintendent brought up, and now you're increasing. I think Kauai is doing a pretty good job in the farm to state program, but we do need scale, and that's why we ask for more support for farmers. Understanding farm is a business also. The procurement code, absolutely. Farmers, it's hard to navigate. We need to make it easier for them or train them on how to navigate. Some are afraid of the procurement code. Some feel they don't even qualify for the procurement code. So there's a bunch of different things.
Is there a way to get around that, Brian? Is there a way to get around the procurement? I mean, the procurement code is, like what's going on between the Hawaii Tourism Authority and all that. I mean, very complicated stuff. You got to have lawyers to basically.
That's for the legislature to decide. Previously, I think local ag products were exempt from the procurement code. Because again, what I was gonna say, Representative, farms are business.
They were exempt.
So
What happened?
farmers may not choose to sell to the schools if they can get a higher price point somewhere else. So something that we can do is we can incentivize the farmers to grow what we want for the farm to state
Farm
programs.
subsidy you're proposing.
And some of what you guys have heard today seeks to do that, and that's why we keep going back to positive policies for farmers. Again, incentivize. We can't tell the farmer what to grow. And the DOE only wants certain things now. The hospitals and the prisons don't have the same federal rules and regulations as the DOE school lunch program does, so it's a little bit easier. I think a previous testifier had said that. But again, understanding the complexity of what farming is, what we need to do to increase farming so that we can have enough scale, addressing some of the procurement code issues. So it's pretty complex, and I think that's where the DOE, personally, been involved in this since I started Farm Bureau, and this is the most I've seen the DOE embrace the farm to school and really want to work with the farmers and to have more local produce in the school systems in DOE. So we applaud them. There is some work to do. We on the farm side, we need to do a little bit better also. We need to communicate better. We can't come up to the DOE and call them the day before or a week before and say, you know, we don't have your produce. We don't have what you folks need. Because the stuff that we ship in is ready to eat also. As you heard the director say, we don't really ship in a lot of extra. That's not a good business model when you're talking about perishable food. So again, having those long-term contracts, having food hubs where maybe one or two farms may have lower production because of force majeure. And we hope to see a force majeure provision in there. So farmers won't get penalized when they can't supply due to natural disasters or pests or theft or all these other things that affect farmers. But having food hubs, maybe 10 farmers growing the same crop, 2 of them fail, you still got 8 to work with. So we really push the food hub programs, and we think that's what's needed. We used to call them co-ops, but we do need scale, Representative. We need to grow some of our farms so that we can produce the food, feed, fiber, fuel, and floriculture, but in this case, the food that Hawaii needs.
Thank you, Brian, for that. Keep meeting together, putting your heads together and coming up with a solution. I think we're probably, with the bills we passed today, are getting closer to that. And the one the other day, the farm hubs. But I shouldn't think about, well, maybe we can do it. It should be where this is a goal by a certain date, it's gonna happen. I mean, it's gonna take some determination. But I know we gotta do our part, but please do your part.
Absolutely. If the goal is set, then we're going to do our best in the ag community to meet that goal and to support the state departments.
Thank you, Rep. Purcell.
Farmers Union, please.
So I apologize. I know the committee hearing is going long, but just a quick clarifying question. So I see this bill as being connected to 3 other measures, one of which is to clarify the already existing federal exemption that exists for procurement around farm to school, so as to enable the DOE to more easily procure local goods for school cafeterias, and then also some decentralization, and then also some funding for both cafeteria upgrades, training, and then local food procurement. So I see this bill as part of a package. And I'm wondering, with this reporting requirement or this language that kind of brings together the farm to state work in a more holistic way, do you think that it would be helpful to have someone, for example, in the governor's office to kind of oversee this? We used to have in the lieutenant governor's office work being done with the Aina Pono program, and that was really effective because that leadership really kind of helped bring stakeholders together to kind of eliminate that competition, maybe it's destructive competition between agencies. Do you think that would be helpful?
It's a big question, but in short, yes. I think similarly, we view this as sort of being part of a suite of measures being forwarded this year, all with the goal to try and increase the opportunities for producers across the state, as well as access to good, healthy food to keiki across the state. To your point, the previous LG's position that was focused on Aina Pono was very valuable, and there's an even longer history that's important to draw upon, which was the Governor's Agricultural Coordinating Committee, which was a previous position in the executive office that focused on I feel like Tinkerbell is going to like arrive, and that focus on coordinating sort of agricultural needs and efforts, right? And so we view this as one, arrow in the quiver to forward towards that. And importantly, like this is intended as well as a streamlining measure, right? So while as a farmers union, we're interested not just in increasing public subsidies, but in understanding the distribution of those public subsidies and how it relates to the distribution of farm size across the state. To Rep. Ward's question earlier, 7,000 of the 7,400 farms across the state are under $250,000 or more in sales. Around 292, 200 are between that 250 and $1 million in sales. And then there's a very, the curve gets pretty steep thereafter, right? But what we've seen in terms of how public subsidies and public coffers often are distributed is that capital flows to the victors, and those who already have the resources are the ones who are often the beneficiaries. So while we've included in this, or we support in this particular bill the understanding of whether it's direct to a farmer, through a food hub, or through a distributor. Ideally, if tracking mechanisms or data systems were in place in entities like the Department of Agriculture, we would ideally be able to see what the size of farm is that's receiving this benefit. Because if we are going to just expend our public coffers to support our agricultural operations, we should do so knowing which agricultural operations are actually gaining that benefit. And with the increase of consolidation, not just in Hawaii, but across the nation and the globe, we see that there are fewer and fewer farm operations. And I think calling them farmers starts to become a misnomer when these are global agribusiness corporations that are now maybe here to grow us some local food, but the surplus value does not accrue to our rural farms and families and communities, but instead that surplus value is sucked off towards shareholders in increasingly distant realms that really are making economic decisions that we do not have the ability to legislate over. And so the more that we increase the benefits that our state provides to those operators, as opposed to ensuring that our local farms and families are the ones who benefit from our programming, the greater risk I think that we will end up facing in the future. So.
That was a very extensive response to my question.
Long question,
Which is really
long
a yes
answer.
or no question. But thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, members. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, we're going to recess for decision making. Recess. Okay, reconvening our 2:20 p.m. agenda for the Committee on Agriculture and Food Systems. We will be now going into decision-making on HB 605. Chair's recommendation is to move this out to further discussion on our reservoirs and dams. We're gonna defect the date to June 30th, 3000, and keep the appropriation blank. Any comments, questions, concerns?
Chair?
Yep.
I will honor DLNR's testimony because they are the experts, actually, and I think to give them right away, I'd vote with reservations.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Comments, questions, concerns? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 605, Chair recommends to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Cochran?
Aye.
Representative Lowen?
Aye.
Representative Peruso?
Aye.
Representative Woodson?
Aye.
Representative Ward?
Aye.
With reservations?
Aye
Oh, you
with
change?
Superlative support.
Okay, just checking. So Representative with aye with reservations. Trying to test me. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to our next bill, HB 308, relating to sustainable food systems. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as an HD1. We're gonna keep the appropriation amount blank. We'll also amend this measure to include additional members based on the many testimonies we received. We're also gonna add a portion for public participation. We are gonna keep the blank, the numbers of FTEs. We're also gonna take in the AG's recommendations, and we're gonna defect the date to June 30th, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 308, Chair recommends to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. With everyone present, anyone voting nay? Anyone voting with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to HB 309, relating to irrigation. Chair's recommendation is gonna move this out as an HD1. We're gonna include the Kalihi Reservoir, as well as keeping the amount of GO bonds authorized blank. We're gonna defect the date to June 30th, 3000. And in the committee report, we're gonna include the 47 million requested by the Department of Agriculture. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair, I just realized when I had reservations on the first bill, she asked me again, and I said I'm supporting, even though my reservation vote was my first one. So on 605, that was with reservations.
Yes, correct.
We were both confused, weren't we?
That's what I was questioning. So, no, I put it correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I even though you said I put with reservations, so.
Yeah, because that was my statement.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
All right, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 309, Chair recommends to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye, noting the presence of everyone here today, of all members. Anyone voting nay? Anyone voting with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Moving on to HB 311, relating to kalo farming. Chair's recommendation is going to move this out as an HD1. We will also defect the date to June 30th, 3000, with no additional tech amendments. As noting, any questions, comments, concerns?
Comment.
Okay,
Chair.
report.
I don't want to pick on no tax, but some of us are on the finance committee, and if we don't know what the revenue hit is, we're just going blind. So when they start in this committee with a bill, when they say we're gonna have a tax, when we say we're gonna have a tax credit, and they don't know what the implication of it is, we are handicapped. So I would hope somehow the message will get to DOTAC. That's part of their job, especially if they're in the room testifying. Sorry, that's my frustration for not this session, but maybe back 3 or 4 sessions.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Mahalo, Chair. Voting on HB 311, the recommendation by the chair is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. With everyone present here today, anyone voting nay? Anyone voting with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members voting on HB 6110 relating to taxation. Chair's recommendation is to move this out at an HD1, no tech amendment, and just defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? See none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Mahalo, Chair. Voting on HB 610, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. With all members being present today, anyone voting nay or with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members voting on HB 612 relating to taxation. Chair's recommendation will be to pass this out as a HD1 with no text and defecting the date to June 30, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 612, the Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. With all members present today, any members voting nay or with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members voting on HB 608 relating to taxation. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as a HD1, no text, defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 608, the Chair recommends to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Since we are all present here today, anyone voting nay or with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members voting on HB 1424. Chair's recommendation is going to pass this out as a HD1. We will be taking in DOA's recommendations on this measure. We're going to also defect the date to June 30th, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Mahalo, Chair. Voting on HB 1424, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. We are all present here today. Anyone voting nay or with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, moving on to HB 1270 relating to hemp. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as an HD1. We're going to add a subsection to specify that DOA shall provide the necessary administrative support, including assistance in preparing the report. We're also going to include in the committee report DOA's recommendation of $85,000 for personnel needed to execute this task. With that being said, we'll also defect the date to June 30th, 3000. Anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1270, the Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. We're all present here today. Anyone voting nay or with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. We're moving on to HB 973. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as a HD1 with no text and defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 973, Chair recommends to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye, noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting nay or with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 976. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out as a HD1 with no text and defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 976, the Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Both Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. We are all present here today. Any members voting nay or with reservations? Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to our next measure. HB 657. Chair's recommendation is going to move this out as a HD1. We're going to keep the appropriation amount blank, and we're going to also, after discussing with the author of this measure, we will be taking the Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association's amendments to this measure. Any comments, questions, concerns? Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, with the defective date as well, June 30, 3000. All right, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 657, Chair recommends to pass with amendments. Both Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. We are all present here today. Any members voting nay? Any members voting with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Voting on Vice Chair Kahaloa's bill, HB 1248, relating to the SNAP incentives. Chair's recommendation is going to move this out as an HD1 We're gonna keep the blanket appropriation amount and we'll defect the date to June 30th, 3,000. We will also include in the committee report the requested $3 million for the program to be matched with the federal program. Any comments, questions, concerns? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 1248, the chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Both chair and vice chair vote aye. We're all present here today. Anyone voting nay? Anyone voting with reservations? Chair, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 275 relating to taro. Chair's recommendation is to move this out at HD1. On page 2, line 20, we're going to change tons to pounds. We're also going to include the AG's recommendation for the standards and to define terms for the grant program. We're also going to keep the appropriation amount blank as well as the maximum per applicant grant amount blank. We will also defect the date to June 30th, 3,000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 275, chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and vice chair vote aye. Noting the presence of all members, anyone voting nay or with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 975. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We will make some substantial, non-substantive, as well as technical amendments needed for clarity, consistency, and style, and defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 975, the recommendation by the chair is to pass with amendments. Chair and vice chair vote aye. We are all present here today. Any members voting nay or with reservation? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members, moving on to HB 619 relating to taxation. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're gonna, after discussion in the committee, we're gonna remove the threshold to allow for all donations to be counted for this tax incentive, tax credit. We also will keep the blanket appropriation amount as well as maximum per applicant amount. We'll also take the AG's recommendation, and then inside of the definitions regarding what eligible products are applicable, we will add a traditional definition to that eligible food product. And then we're gonna defect the date to June 30th, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on HB 619, chair recommends to pass with amendments. Chair and vice chair vote aye. All members are present here today. Anyone voting nay or with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, members, last measure, HB 247 relating to agriculture. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We will be defecting the date, and we will add a farm to state liaison to facilitate reporting and procurement within the office of the governor, as well as defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns, members? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the final vote.
Voting on HB 247, chair recommends to pass with amendments. Chair and vice chair vote aye. Noting the presence of all members, anyone voting nay or with reservations? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Hearing adjourned.